Welcome to Specific Love. Today I'm going to show you how my wife and I took some old pallets and turned it into this awesome kitchen bar table. Let's begin. And just a reminder, this is the 4th of 5 woodworking videos that we're releasing for the month of November. If by chance you hadn't seen any of the others, I'll put a link to the playlist in the description below. My wife wanted a kitchen bar table for some time now, but not a store-bought one. She wanted it to be made out of pallet wood. Fortunately, one of her co-workers had a bunch of good quality pallets that she needed to remove. So we jumped in my truck and picked up 2 huge stacks of pallets for free. What a blessing. And most of these pallets were in great shape and just needed a good cleaning before use. A family member of ours let us borrow this pressure washer so we can clean those pallets really quickly. Now it's always a good idea to return something in better condition to receive it, so we're going to be changing the oil in the pump, and not just the engine, but in the pump itself because it has a bunch of hours and it needs to be changed. The pressure washing was easy and surprisingly removed some of what appeared to be concrete caked onto the boards. After washing, I gave them a few days to dry. During that time, my wife was preparing in the kitchen. She chose her favorite location and marked it with a long roll of paper and some tape. After they dried, it was time for disassembly, which turned out to be a little harder than we planned. Fortunately, after a quick search on YouTube, I grabbed my sawzall and was able to quickly cut through the outer nails. But the inner nails were still not that easy. I had to carefully pry with a crowbar and a hammer to remove each board without splitting them. And this took a little longer than expected too. If you plan on having some pallet projects in your future, I strongly suggest purchasing a purposely built pallet removal tool to speed up this process. After removing a large pile of wood, I wanted to give them a light sanding to remove some of the splinters and large dents to help prevent injury in the future. I tried using a hand sander, and it seemed to take forever. And it was at this point that I realized we had received hardwood pallets. So I took my belt sander outside with 60 grit paper and began to remove the top layer. This worked well, but to my surprise, it was still a slow process. With this experience, I gained a new respect for those who work with hardwood often. After sanding a bunch of boards, I headed inside to start the frame of the table. We decided to keep the bar at 8 feet wide so we could utilize some standard 2x4s. My wife wanted the depth of the table to be about 18 inches. So we planned the frame to about 17 inches, which allowed for some trim to be added. I then trimmed out a couple boards to 14 inches and used a Craig kit to add some pocket holes to each side. This will help ensure the frame will stay sturdy and square. I then clamped them together and added the screws. For the height of the bar, my wife wanted it to be about 38 inches tall. So I trimmed 4 boards to 37 inches, which allowed some room for the top pallet layer. I then added some wood glue to each joint, clamped them in place, drilled pilot holes, and added 4 screws to each board. 2 on the inside and 1 on the outside of each framed board. To give some extra stability to the legs, I added 2 more horizontal boards, 1 at floor level and 1 about halfway. These pieces are not load bearing, so I just drilled straight into the end grain. And once those were complete, it was now time to cut the pallet wood. I measured out each piece to 17 inches, which happened to frame the old nail holes perfectly. I used a chop saw to cut each piece and we ended up with 24 boards. Then my wife helped me remove all of the existing nails in each board. With a quick test fit, the table was taking shape and we could now envision the final product. Giving the table a little more thought, we decided to add a small backing plate to help prevent future spills from hitting the wall. Whenever you're buying wood, always make sure to check their damaged pile. They try to discard these at a much reduced price. For example, these boards I got right here for 70% off their normal price, which ended up being, I think it was about $1.50, maybe $2 for these 1x6x6 boards. Now, they are a little bit damaged here on the end, but I plan on cutting that off anyway and using it for this project, so make sure you always check out that area. I first removed one of the damaged ends of one side of each pine board with my chop saw, and then I measured out 4 feet and trimmed the other side. This gave me 2 4-foot boards to make our 8-foot long backing. I then took them over to my router table and rounded the top front edge. I actually made this simple router table in the second video of this series, so if you're interested in seeing how it was built, I will put a link to the playlist in the description. The top edge of the boards turned out real nice. I then measured and clamped the backing boards to the back of the frame so that they would rest about 3/4 of an inch from the bottom of the frame. This will make the final measurement about 2 inches above the pallet wood. I then drilled pilot holes and added several screws along each board to prevent any chance of the backing being knocked off. And during this time, my wife was busy staining the pallets into several different colors. She even mixed up some of her own custom colors to get the desired shades that she wanted. When it comes to color, my wife has a much better eye than myself. so as each board was stained, I could see an artwork masterpiece coming together. And after a little time to dry, we carefully nailed each board onto the frame. It was now time to add a front pallet facing, but I first took them over to the router table and rounded the top edge to remove the sharp angle. And since the pallet pieces were already 4 feet long, they did not require any trimming. For the front boards, instead of using nails, we chose screws to add a little more strength. This will prevent the wood from moving as we use the table. And since the screws were tan in color, they actually looked good with the wood. It was now time to add the side trim. I measured and trimmed them on the chop saw. I then used a router again, but this time on 2 sides to smooth off the sharp edges. I then clamped them in place and added 4 nails to each. Now if you plan to work with pallet wood in the future, please remember a few things. Pallet wood is not going to lay perfectly flat. In fact, you'll be lucky to find 2 boards that even match. But all of these imperfections are what gives the project its antique look and character. So if you want a perfectly flat table, avoid pallets, or you'll be spending days and maybe weeks just sanding to smooth everything out. Now this table is awesome. You can do so many additional things to this, maybe put a polyurethane coating on it, or paint it, or whatever you'd like to maybe give the backsplash a little bit of a different contrast to maybe the top of it. But that is totally up to you if you want to make a project like this. Now when it comes to the frame, you can also paint it, or you can put pallets maybe down the side of it, or maybe put something like an X on pallets just to give it kind of a different design, but that is totally up to your choice and your design. Now we're gonna leave this as is for a few days and just kind of get used to it and see where my wife wants to take it, and then I'll go from there. Now if you like this project, make sure you click the like button, tell us what you think about it in the comments, and as always, have fun building.